Hello world. Today we're going to be looking at the unspoken mysteries of the Overwatch 2 story mode, as told by everyone's favourite reading material, official documentation! And more specifically, the new in-world character bios to try and decipher their various encrypted details. Now, some of these we won't be able to figure out just yet, but we can at least take them as hints at future development, as is the case with our first character here, D.Va. Latest research shows that the Gwishin encrypted. That's way too vague to really make any true call on. It's something that will evidently come up in the future. That means that the Gwishin are going to be relevant somewhere down the line. That is great, personally. The way it's referred to as research does make me think it's got something to do with the Gwishin's nature, like perhaps the individual bodies all exist in a hive mind, or maybe it's something to do with their history, that it's based in the East China Sea Omnium, and the Omnium should be something that's kept classified. That's sort of the way I think you have to look at the encrypted data, like what kind of information would need to be encrypted. Which brings us to this next one, unconfirmed reports that D.Va is encrypted. This has to be something external to my mind, or something so personal that they can't approach D.Va about it. The one thing I can't see it being is that she's dead, because we all know she's not. Although that could be like a cover story that Mecha is using to justify her disappearance, or something along those lines. But to look externally, it could be keeping connections to certain people quiet for protection of that person. Or if it's leaning more towards D.Va, almost trying to protect her, it could be a sort of warning about her mental state, that she's prone to self-destructive behavior. This could be sort of like a personal warning for Overwatch in general, to look out for D.Va, to make sure she's okay. It could even just be something like that. This I see developing into far less of a plot thread than the Gwishin bit. This could be much more of a character expansion in this realm. Which takes us to Reinhardt. His efforts helped end the Omnic crisis, and he was involved in countless missions, including Operation White Dome, where Torbjorn lost his arm and Reinhardt saved his life, Uprising, the original Null Sector invasion of King's Row, and Encrypted. And taking this next sentence and the encrypted bit into account, this must be the long hinted at reason for his retirement. This here would be the event that caused his retirement, whatever that exactly would be, and due to his encrypted and he withdrew, suggests that all of these encrypted sections are not just single words, they can be anything up to like parts of sentences, because I think we can figure some of this out, but not the whole thing. We don't know the event that caused him to retire, but I think that the due to his, I think we're looking at his behavior, his attitude. And especially as has been really heavily lent into with the story missions, to me this would be due to his disregard for Omnic life. He did something, then realized the weight of his actions, and he withdrew from all Overwatch activities. Maybe he didn't even realize the weight of his actions. But to me, from the setup of the story missions, this is going to be linked to his ignorance about Omnic existence. That's the angle I think that that's going to address there. Whether we're actually going to get to see this, I would love it if they brought archives back in some realm, especially through like event missions and stuff like that. This could actually be pretty interesting, at least on a character level. It doesn't sound like it's very future facing compared to some of the other bits we're going to look at, like the Gwishin from D.Va. Winston here is a mix of the two, especially this first one. Horizon Lunar Colony was funded and established by Lucheng Interstellar and Encrypted. Now, when I saw funded, my mind immediately jumped to Maximilian. He's the money guy, but I think that the timeline, as per the Awakening and Winston's likely age and when the colony was started, probably not Maximilian. The only other place I can really, like, jump, and I don't see exactly why you'd want to encrypt this, would be Oasis. Or even more specifically, potentially, Moira. Moira having been ex-Blackwatch, I guess, could be a connection as to why you'd encrypt that sort of information. The link to Oasis for me would make sense as they're one of the sort of hubs of scientific progress in the Overwatch universe. Moira is their head of genetics. Horizon Lunar Colony was established to do genetic testing. Ergo, that's my connection there. As this has to actually be quite old history, like 30 years or so ago-ish, that this would have happened, this is obviously going to be like something a bit bigger, more of an institution, rather than an individual, although that could certainly still be possible. While that is obviously old history, as it's been encrypted, it suggests that whoever is responsible here, whatever was responsible for this funding and establishment, is going to come up in the future. I like that as an expansion of Winston and Horizon Lunar Colony. The other test subjects have been a long-standing background mystery of the Overwatch universe as it stands. Awesome by my measure. His notable inventions include the Encrypted and the Chronal Accelerator. Wait, what's more nuts than the Chronal Accelerator? I have literally no idea where to go with that one. It suggests to me that that's a plotline that could come up in the future. Something important that Winston made could become kind of relevant. Interesting. Zarya. Zarya is very straightforward. We actually know this one. Zarya briefly worked with Volskaya Industries 2. This is most likely referring to the Searching comic, where Zarya teamed up with the Omnic White Hat hacker Lynx 17 in order to search out Sombra. Having met Sombra, Zarya and Volskaya Industries parted ways. So, on to Bastion. Bastion has actually no encrypted data. I always find that really surprising. There isn't actually really anything new here or any encrypted data to examine. I think that's very strange. I thought they might have referenced his Omnium or something, but no. Nothing for Bastion, and actually nothing for Cassidy. That again kind of surprises me. As we mentioned earlier with Blackwatch, Blackwatch feels like something they might want to keep encrypted. It's meant to be classified information for only the people who are in Overwatch to have access to that kind of information. Cassidy does, however, have one thing that no one else has. New in Cassidy. Cassidy has gone missing after the explosion at Overwatch's Swiss headquarters. No other hero has this piece of information written about them. Suggests to me, we might get to eventually see the Swiss HQ fall of Overwatch from Cassidy's perspective. Maybe it's just that he's gone missing, whereas nobody else went missing, I guess? Could be the thing there. The fact that they're bringing it up, if that's the only specific thing, like, these details, like, summarizing how and where they've been in the meantime, like, this is referencing New Blood again, this is the Train Hopper comic, most likely. This, if it's just saying he went missing, sure, fine, that is a core detail, but to bring it up makes it sound like it's so much more important than that. Actually interesting for not being encrypted. Oh, Echo, Jesus Christ. Dr. Liao expressed encrypted. Dr. Liao expressed a gazillion and one things about Echo, from the greatest of aspirations to the mightiest of fears. There are so many things that could be. I can't really get into it. If you want to see a bit more of what Liao would have said, you can check out my video on Echo's recent short story. I guess the most specific thing would be her desire for Echo to be the bridge between humans and Omnics. I think that's a pretty, like, bold statement that the higher-ups at Overwatch would want to keep from, say, the public from seeing, right? Obviously, this is Athena doing all this, which, oh wow, that adds a whole other layer of intrigue to that this is Athena largely encrypting this data. Yeah, all of it is Athena. That could actually be a really cool expansion for Athena to see her sort of encrypting positive expressions about Echo because she's, like, jealous. They're sisters, essentially. There could be so much more going on here than that actually suggests. Wow. Echo proved successful on test missions, but was never put into full service due to, again, this could be a gazillion and one things. It could be really big, like world fears about Omnic consciousness, or it could be something a bit more straightforward and in, like, sort of the principle of AI about good and bad training, that they didn't want her to be exposed to some of, like, the true immorality of the world, so that she didn't essentially corrupt herself with all that kind of information. And I guess the last thing that you might want to encrypt about Echo is that there was an incident where something went really wrong. Again, that's a bit of old history, potentially, if that's the case, but if something went wrong with Echo once, it could maybe go wrong again. That would be very interesting to see. Genji. The Shimada's criminal activities started to expand into Encrypted, which put them under Overwatch's surveillance. Now, I know they were weapons dealers, but for it to be encrypted, to me, sounds like you really have to put it at quite a high status. Like, I don't think it's assassination. They mention assassination. It's got to be something actually much bigger than you'd first anticipate, which to me makes me want to lean towards the dragons expanding into whatever the hell the dragons are, which, messing with stuff of that nature, like, no, Overwatch has to look into that. You know, even though there may be a centralized element of unchecked power, so is expanding into the dragons, right? That one at present is a little too non-specific for me to make a guess on. There could be actually something quite straightforward that this is and that we already know. He then joined Blackwatch, focusing on dismantling his family's criminal empire and Encrypted. He later moved on to Overwatch. The Encrypted there, to me, especially as they mentioned moving on to Overwatch, we're bringing up Blackwatch, which, okay, that Blackwatch doesn't have to be encrypted. Focusing on his family's criminal empire was the thing we'd known about his early time with Overwatch anyway, so this encrypted info is more than likely referring to his most significant venture with Blackwatch, Retribution, otherwise known as the Venice incident. He was then part of Overwatch during Storm Rising, and it's kind of weird to see that not even be mentioned here, but I also wouldn't be surprised if that was classified info as well. To be seen. May. Oh, there's nothing for May. Yeah, there's nothing for May. That's a shame. Pharah. Ah, this one's weird. Due to Encrypted, her application will require Encrypted to avoid conflicts of interest. Her connection to her mother and her connections to Helix are mentioned. So the one thing that isn't said, even though it's implied, is her connection to Anubis. Because why encrypt the details about the relationship with family when the family is brought up so openly? Same thing about Helix. Yeah, to me, this can't be, like, familial connections. Unless, again, Athena is, like, trying to keep at least the more obvious hardships out of Pharah's line of sight. Even if just by sparing her the details, but those will most likely be raised anyway, because then her application will require Encrypted to avoid conflicts of interest. That, to me, is then... You either need, like, external validation, like you need someone else to give her a reference. So, oh, wow. After all this time of wanting to join Overwatch and not being able to, she joins but isn't officially part of it. She needs someone else to, like, say she's a part of it. That would suck. That'd be an awful character experience for her. So this could be a bit more on, like, a character angle. If it's a plot thing, then I'd say that it is, like, the connection to Anubis, and her application will require sort of, like, debriefing, or officially retiring, or just leaving Helix, as there's a conflict of interest, because they work for the IJC, the anti-Overwatch people. Yeah, that's the most prevalent thing I can see there, but definitely not something that's apparent, due to the other information that's revealed. Something to come up. Sojourn. Only one encrypted piece here, and it's just her activity with the organization. And I think this is meant to be referencing fighting against the Detroit Omnium. The Sojourn and Ash novels are like my two gaps in knowledge where it comes to Overwatch as far as I'm concerned. But as far as I know, that's what this is likely referencing. her actions involving the Detroit Omnium, which was always meant to be a very, like, significant element of the lore. How significant it actually is now, I don't actually know. Hopefully, further stuff's going to develop from it. Torbjorn. Yes. Credited for inventions that were vital to ending the Omnic crisis, such as Reinhardt Wilhelm's evolved Crusader armor, Anna Amari's biotic rifle, and other Encrypted. I hate to be this guy. Neither Reinhardt's evolved Crusader armor or Anna's biotic rifle were used to end the Omnic crisis. Like, his evolved Crusader armor, he just got, like, recently. I thought that was the whole point of his new armor detailing, his new, like, cosmetic update. And Anna's rifle, like, we know that she was still using just a classic sniper rifle well after the Omnic crisis was over. Never mind, it was only actually invented thanks to Mercy's biotic tech, and so couldn't even have existed during the crisis. So while he is credited for these inventions, and as he should be, they were not vital to ending the Omnic crisis. That's just a really weird nitpick to me. And other Encrypted, and that to me is just like, I don't know, war crimes? Like, any other, like, ridiculous machinery he made. Hopefully it would tie into something like the encrypted information from Winston's bio, like this mysterious, even more secretive device that we don't know of yet. But beyond that, it does just sound like it's covering up some of his more dubious inventions. This one, then, we do actually know. Torbjorn was seen disabling a rogue Titan unit in Baklovo. It was reportedly piloted by Encrypted. Why would you encrypt Sven's name? Is it because he's like a person of interest and you want to keep elements like the higher-ups of Talon or anyone associated away from prying eyes of the public who might be able eventually to get hold of this information? I assume that's why you classify this kind of information, right? So you know what information has been encrypted here, but then it begs the question to me as to why. If they bring Sven back, hilarious. Tracer doesn't have anything encrypted? Yeah, she's Tracer. She doesn't have anything to hide. Very different story here. And we actually know all of these. And there's a very interesting little extra piece here. Baptiste, affiliations, Caribbean Coalition, of course. Talon. After the crisis, he joined Talon and sent money to fund his clinic in Haiti. And was instrumental in... This one actually, I don't think we know. You could maybe say Monte Cristi, the event that caused him to leave Talon, ultimately, but he wasn't instrumental in that. The only thing I can really think of is his more recent effort in exposing Vincent Sinclair in What You Left Behind, the pharmaceutical giant. Maybe that? And I can see why that could be encrypted. Sinclair was an ex-Overwatch official, things like that. That could work to my mind, but it's definitely not anything solid by any means. Communication interception, again we know this from What You Left Behind, suggests that he is communicating with Encrypted, although this is still unconfirmed. That's Sombra. They send each other a message at the very end of the story, and it's interesting to me that there's encrypted targeted data at Cassidy's request. This could be every single piece, like hiding his affiliation to Talon, as Baptiste, through the story missions, definitely doesn't seem to want to talk about that. But as we at least have the suggestion through voice lines and the old comic image, I think it's from Reflections, of Sombra and Cassidy sat in the same bar, Cassidy could well be the one who had Sombra's affiliation to Baptiste hidden. That would be a real interesting little twist for my money. Brigitte. Nothing encrypted to say. Oh, but the complete opposite. Alert. Unauthorized protocol traces detected. May indicate data breach on Brigitte's post-Gothenburg journal. Code, yada yada. If this translates to a Sombra thing, awesome. I don't know if it does. This is, though, finally confirming the Sombra-Brigitte interaction, where Sombra says that she's read some of her poetry and kind of openly mocks it. But these journals are being kept in the Intel database alongside Brigitte's bio. That could suggest that Sombra hasn't just breached Brigitte's personal device. She's managed to breach past Athena into the Overwatch database. That could be a pretty huge reveal if it gets developed on in the future. Lucio. There's nothing actually for Lucio, is there? Oh, poor guy. The message from his dad is really nice in the comms screen. There's a nice amount of character development in the comms screen. Lucio had nothing. And Mercy. Her research has been used in Encrypted. This could be talking about the biotic rifle, but the biotic rifle has been openly referenced earlier in these documents. So for my money, that's probably got to be something to do with Moira. We know from, I think it's an old like Moira teaser before she got released, you could find one of Mercy's papers on one of the Oasis maps. So that'd be my best guess there, that this is referring to Moira. But from there, that's all the agents we have. That's all the information we can unlock for now. I would expect to potentially see some of these get unlocked as the story missions progress. We could even quite easily get sort of an infiltration by Sombra as she quietly unencrypts everything in front of us to set us up for a different mission, or to unveil some of these particular bits of information to set up for something else. There's actually a lot of potential here. I never thought that I would find official documents so actually kind of interesting. There's definitely some groundwork being laid here, but as stated multiple times through the video, it's really hard to know what exactly that setup is going to be for. Whether it is just hinting at old information that's nice to know and it's pushing you to look into that old information, or whether that old info is going to be relevant somehow in the future. I couldn't say for now. My other video on the future of the Overwatch story might be able to give you some ideas, but that's all from me for today. Thank you for staying with me, friends. I've been Euclidean Vision, the emotional support. Take care of yourselves out there, and may the glorious light of Best Girl shine within you. Bye-bye.